Well, I'm joined today by Kimberly Dickson, who's the founder and CEO of HyperTribe, who are helping music artists around the world thrive. So, Kimberly, thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. No, could you give us a little bit of background about yourself and how you came up with HyperTribe?
So I've had 15 years experience in the music industry in various different roles, and I've just seen a lot of problems in the music industry, and 99% of musicians make under £12,000 a year. And for me, that was just something that just didn't ever sit right with me. I'm sure it doesn't sit right with a lot of people, but the problem is that I saw that play out with my own eyes about the disparity between the people who were right at the top and then people that were developing. And so just really wanted to utilize technology. And I really feel like in this day and age, other industries have done it. Why couldn't we do it in music? And once you dig down deep into what those problems really are, it becomes a little bit more obvious around a lot of the musicians not being able to retain the right information, overwhelm, which is all kind of very solvable things through technology.
And so you say this is primarily a access to information or access to facilities problem. Would that be correct?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's an education problem, but there's also an overwhelm problem as well. I mean, there's hundreds of things. I mean, you are a CEO as a musician. You've got to learn all these things. You've got to become a marketing guru. There's a lot of skills that you actually have to take on and learn, not just in music and not just from the music perspective. So that's something that I've always wanted to help with, which is how can we get more artists more creative?
What are the main problems that you see in the industry?
There's a lot of gatekeeping, and that can come in different forms. I'm not just talking obviously about everyone goes straight to the major labels and so on. I think actually there's it's wider than that. You know, and that comes down to information, access, networks, and just actually geographically territories. If you take a look at how the music industry is made up, it's so fragmented in so many different ways. But all of this just kind of adds to this whole big problem. And I just think in this day and age, we should definitely be solving those issues. So there are quite a few issues on that. Not understanding how to navigate the industry. A lot of people, we did a survey. We did a survey on a whole range of different musicians and people that were just coming into the music industry. You know, they've just kind of started out like, yeah, I know everything about the music industry. And then as they got further into their careers, they actually retracted that statement and would say, actually, I don't really know the music industry that well, because they realize on the surface, it looks like, you know, you just put a song out and then it's out there, but it's not. It's so many different layers of the industry that just understanding that just from a basic level is sometimes really complex.
So there's almost a level of education which is about helping people understand what they don't know or they're not prepared for before you go into educating them around how to approach some of those issues or solve some of those problems.
Exactly. And people really underestimate. I've seen this happen in a lot of the talks we've had with investors or talks that we've had with just generally industry people. People underestimate the overwhelming amount of tasks and that whole getting your head around certain concepts in the music industry that I think we have to be a little bit careful with, because if you underestimate, you know, an artist getting overwhelmed, that might mean that they quit. That might mean that they have, you know, some mental health issues that they then have to deal with. And that they're all factors. And then there's biases as well. You know, there's 20% of artists signed to major labels are female. So we've got a whole other issue around that as well. So
it's amazing, actually, with throughout all of these interviews that I've conducted, I think returning to that idea of overwhelm and mental health is quite consistent across all industries. So who are you helping and how?
So we don't focus on the 1%. And when I say the 1%, I mean the Beyoncés and the Drakes of this world. We think they're all right. They got it covered. So
Ed Sheeran's doing okay. He doesn't need your platform.
Don't think he needs my help at all. So they're doing all right. So we leave those major labels and we leave those guys at the top. What we focus on is the 99% of artists. There's 300 million people developing in music across the world, and we are really helping them to educate them on and strategize about the best routes to monetization. So that's what we do. At that and the current form that it's in, we do that through educational materials, but we have some things that are kind of more innovative technology that we're building in the background to support that strategy, and that's based on their location, their genre, the stage that they're at, all the way through to their psychometric testing. There's certain personality types as musicians that are actually going to be more successful, and everyone's version of success is also is slightly different. I wouldn't say, I was going to say very different, but that's actually not true. It's only slight deviations around that, and that's what we help with.
I'm interested to know what's your version of success. What would success look like for HyperTribe?
We have a goal of helping 1 million artists. That's one of our biggest things. I mean, we've worked with over 6,000 artists already in 15 different countries. And so we want to, get to that 1 million is looking at 20,000 in 50 different countries. And I don't think that's unrealistic for what we're doing at the moment. And I think we will achieve that in the coming years.
Would you say you're also bridging, at HyperTribe, are you bridging EdTech and FinTech? And are there any other sectors that you're bringing into the platform?
I mean, music tech is probably where we're actually really sitting. But the form that comes in, for sure, I would say you do have a bit of EdTech. I mean, we're on EdTech Accelerator at the moment, Supercharger Ventures, which is the world-leading EdTech accelerator. So we were selected out 15 companies to do that. And so we obviously have some EdTech in what we do. We've got some gamification elements as well of what we're doing. There's a few things around fan development, and I would say there is a little bit of fintech, but it's with all of this, like, the challenge has always been just to make things as easy as possible and simple as possible, because it's just again, if we're going back to the overwhelm for artists, keeping it as simply as music tech, I think, is probably going to be our best chance, rather than dividing up some of the technology into different industries and different sectors.
That makes sense. And especially as you mentioned that in addition to being an artist and a creator, to then have to be the CEO of your own business.
Yeah.
That's a lot to think. So are you relieving that stress and that burden for as many artists as possible?
Yeah, I mean, if you take a look at a lot of the artists, we've spoken to over the years, I mean, I personally have worked with over 1,000 artists in the last few years, and it's been super fun, but I've learned so much from a lot of those artists around how much time they're spending not doing things that are creative. And I think that really kills them sometimes. And then you've got to come back and take some time out. And it's so overwhelming, constantly being barraged by you've got to do social media posts. You've got to look through this contract. Is this person going to screw you over? Are they reliable? I need to find someone to help me do my PR, but I don't really know where to start, etc. So just streamlining all of that, I think, is just such a basic thing that needs to be done.
But broader than just the artists that you're helping, why is it important that we create a society where more musicians and artists are thriving?
Oh, well, first of all, we're missing out on a hell of a lot of money in the creative industries. And I think good music needs to be heard. The channels that we have at the moment, I don't think that they're efficient enough. I mean, Spotify has its uses, but it literally tells you that it's not good at its job. It will say how many active followers or active audience you have. And, the highest I've ever seen, even with big artists, is 6%. So it's literally telling you it's not good enough. So can you just explain that when you say 6%? What is 6%? So in your dashboard, on the back of your dashboard, it will say who are your active listeners, who are the people who are planning to go and see what they're visiting your profile. And I think the highest I've ever seen is like 6%, because
I see.
got
Okay.
passive listeners on there. And so Spotify is literally telling you it's really good at this job. So how do we get that engagement? How do we get that fanaticism? And I think we all really engage in experiences. I think culturally as well, there's so much music, for example, coming out of West Africa at the moment that is absolutely incredible. It's influencing the charts like no tomorrow. Those things need to be discovered and have the progression pathways put in place, because we have so much more in terms of creative economy to contribute. And I just don't think that we're even scratching the surface on how big that can be.
And do you help people discover new artists or new genres?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've done that indirectly. We don't do that directly on our platform at the moment. But we have definitely helped with discovery.
Are there any specific case studies or examples that you'd like to highlight of how you've influenced or helped artists on their journey?
Probably. We've got a couple of things that are happening at the moment. One of our previous HyperTribers is now charting, and we've put a great French artist on a world tour with a more established artist, and that was really good for her, which then helped her branch out into her own career. That was a nice full circle moment. And then last International Women's Day, so 2022 International Women's Day, we did a really nice campaign highlighting some of the mentors and also some of our HyperTribers up and down the country with Kurt Geiger. So that was a really nice campaign that they did. They did it so well. And really told our story and the artist story really nicely. So that, I think that also was really good in terms of exposure and also supporting the artists to be able to have something as well to then go forward with more partnerships as well. Yeah. So those are kind of key highlights I can probably tell off the top of my head, but we've got a few more to come. We're working with an artist here in Malta. She's one of the biggest artists here, and she's got good numbers. She's got good engagement and so on. And so we're just taking a look at how that progression route could maybe work into the UK. I think she has some applicable music there, and I think that could be really interesting for her.
And finally, what is your vision for the future? If you're successful at HyperTribe, how would you like to see the music industry changed?
I'm sure that we will get to a stage where we'll see more fanatic fans, people finding and discovering in a really meaningful way. That's what I would really like. And then also, our whole aim is to get artists onto a sustainable income. And we're not talking about, we're not trying to make the next Justin Bieber. If that happens, then it happens. And, there's some artists that we can now see coming through that are nearly there. But that's not the aim. The aim is to get everyone into a sustainable income so that it becomes the norm to be able to do music as a full-time job rather than the exception.
And I guess that helps for more people from more diverse backgrounds, or particularly from economic backgrounds, to getting into the music industry and seeing it as a realistic career.
100%. We're 72% female as a platform, which is huge in the music industry, because although we don't fully push that, it's a really, really important topic for me. I've been through some really horrible experiences in the music industry when it comes to misogyny and just really precarious situations that I never thought I'd ever have to be in. And so it's really important that we support a lot of women, because you can see that there's talent there. It's a 50-50 split coming out of music school, and then it goes down to 20% being signed to major labels. I'm not saying being signed to a major is the be all and end all. I'm just saying it's just a good indicator of sustainable careers sometimes. but yeah, so there's something we've got that I think with our technology, what it can do is it can plan those routes and the most appropriate people for you, given that you have no network to begin with. You can jump into that, and that's a game changer, because a lot of the musicians that we see dropping out that are female is because they've either been put in a situation where they are kind of almost forced to leave the industry, because I don't know, they could, there's a whole range of reasons why that would happen, but I've seen it too many times. And so if you can have a trusted soundboard where we have no agenda, and like, cool, if you pay your subscription and you're good, like, cool, we're good. So that's really, really important for us to do, is to have that kind of steady hand in the background that just tells you, this is what we think is best for you. And I think sometimes we miss that because in the music industry, because you have a lot of people with a lot of different agendas that can sometimes come for you.
So tell me a little bit about the team and what you're aiming to build at HyperTribe.
So I just kind of wanted to say thank you to everyone, obviously, that has been involved in the journey so far. We've got some really incredible people around us, everything from music to tech to like even the operations side that I really didn't think would ever want to be working on this. But, they're kind of like top of their field. Really interested in about changing, and it's very obvious that I think a lot of the team are very much aligned on what the vision is for the future of what we're doing and why we're doing it. I think that's always really, really important, which is creating that culture and that movement around getting musicians onto sustainable incomes. That's a big drive for us to help as many people as possible.
Kimmy, thank you very much for your time and telling us all about HyperTribe.
Thanks very much, James.
Wish you all the best of luck.
Thank you.